Thank you, Governor Brown, Governor DeWine, and the NGA for the opportunity to be here. My name is Doug Blanke, and I lead a nonpartisan, nonprofit legal center in the Twin Cities where we have 15 attorneys specializing in these issues that we're discussing today who are ready to help you and your staff and your legal counsel as you wrestle with these issues that we're discussing. Our folks are already working with your staff within your health department, so please let us know how we can be helpful to you. We want to do that because, like you and Justice Brandeis, we truly believe that the states are the laboratories of our democracy, and it's where we experiment until we get it right and find the path forward for the nation. There's nowhere where that's been more true than in this field of tobacco control, where virtually every major advance in history has originated at the state and local level. And never have we needed your leadership more than we do now. As the governors have said, this vaping crisis has exploded upon us. For 20 years and more, we had made slow, painfully slow, but steady progress in reducing youth smoking. 20 years ago, when I was relatively new in this field, we had 28% of high school kids smoking cigarettes. And through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears by many people in this room, we have now brought that down to 5.8%. We might even be saying that victory was almost within our reach if e-cigarettes had not exploded upon the scene in the last 5 years, driven by slick design, fancy flavors that attract kids, and technology that allows nicotine that can be twice as potent as that in cigarettes. We have now suddenly reached the point that while cigarette smoking is down to 5%, the use of e-cigarettes is up there at 28% and continuing to grow. So we have to do something about it. My focus this afternoon is going to be on the balance between the federal responsibility and the state responsibility. It's been a decade now since Congress gave the FDA authority over tobacco products. And in that time, what we've had is kind of a dance between the feds and the state to figure out the respective roles that each should play. And I'm going to speak to the two latest steps in that dance. The new federal legislation raising the age of sale to 21, and the announcement last month by the FDA of a new enforcement policy on flavored e-cigarettes. First of all, the age of sale. This new federal legislation, which is often referred to by the nickname T21, was enacted in December. How does it affect you and your states? What do you need to know, and what can you do about it, or what do you want to do about it? First of all, it just has to be said that there is going to be a certain amount of confusion in most every state as this gets implemented, because in most states there is a state law that doesn't necessarily align with the new federal law. Even if you're one of the states that has gone to 21, you may well have exceptions, for example, for military personnel. So the new federal law enacted in December, when did it take effect? It took effect immediately. It is the law now. What does it say? It says no one is allowed to buy, or no one is allowed to sell tobacco products of any kind to persons under the age of 21, no exceptions. So it's on the books. When will it be enforced? Well, the FDA won't be enforcing surely before September, when they've completed writing the rules for enforcement. Can you enforce it? Well, if you've enacted a law that aligns with the federal law, you can enforce that. If you have a licensing system for your tobacco retailers that makes reference to their duty to comply with federal law, you could consider a licensing action. Other than that, you will no doubt be in a gray area. You should also anticipate some questions involving what is called SINAR checks. If you're not familiar with that term, SINAR checks are testing, sales testing that's done anonymously, that's required for you to continue to receive your federal block grants for substance abuse from SAMHSA. Those may be done under contract by an agency of your own state government, or in a few cases by others. And those will now be done using the 21 standard, whether or not that aligns with your state statute. So again, there's going to be some sorting out that has to happen with all of that. Is there a way to clear it up? Yes, if you can get your legislature to bring you into alignment with the feds, and I think Matt may be speaking to that. Let me now turn to the other latest federal development, the newly announced enforcement policy from the FDA with regard to flavored e-cigarettes. The first thing I would like you to know is that this new policy is actually an FDA enforcement policy. It's not a ban. And what do I mean by that? This most likely would come as a surprise to most people, but the fact is, under the Federal Tobacco Control Act, every e-cigarette on the marketplace today is in the market unlawfully. Let me repeat that. Every e-cigarette in the marketplace today is there unlawfully. These are, you could call them, undocumented products. And why is that the case? Because the design of the federal law, once the FDA asserted authority over this form of product, the FDA law says nothing is to be sold until information has been submitted to the FDA for their review and approval, and none of these products have been approved. What is happening instead is that the FDA is using its discretion when it comes to enforcement to say they aren't going to enforce that law against most of those products yet. And what has happened now with this new policy is a change in that position. They have said they're going to use their enforcement discretion differently, and they will start going after some e-cigarettes. The new policy, as I say, is one to use their discretion to go after some products, some flavors. You could say kind of picking winners and losers as to who they're going to go after. The time today doesn't allow me to go through all the specifics of who it is, but suffice it to say this. A main cause of the vaping epidemic is the proliferation of all these flavored products, more than 1,000 different flavors out there appealing to our kids. Not just familiar flavors like menthol, but candy and fruit and even flavors like cotton candy or bubble gum flavor of products. As this problem gained more attention and was considered by the FDA for the last year back and forth, opponents of any changes organized and put pressure on the FDA as it developed its policy. Vape shops, manufacturers of these products, tobacco companies. And as a result, after a year of going back and forth, the FDA has announced a policy that I can only describe as a bit of a mishmash, saying that they will act against some flavors in some types of products, but not others. The reason we have this bit of a muddle is, I think, due to an understandable instinct on the part of the OMB as they reviewed this process to try to strike what they felt was a balance between the health concerns and the voices of those saying there would be economic consequences to any change, whether there was really any evidence to back that up. So there was an attempt to strike a balance by targeting certain products on the theory that these were the most popular products with kids. They looked at the latest surveys and tried to target the types of products and the flavors that they felt were most popular. In the end, you could say they may have tried to please everybody and ended up pleasing no one and confusing everyone. The example that comes to my mind is, imagine, governors, if you were going to try to address the problem of teen drinking and you went to your legislature and said, we've got a survey that says the most popular kind of liquor with teens is peach brandy. And so my teen drinking program is to ban peach brandy. Well, you know, that would be great for the first week, but do you think kids might find their way to strawberry wine or, you know, cherry vodka. Well, to us, that's kind of where we are with this new process. And the resolution of that, the best resolution, is to look back to the states, to you and your legislatures for a solution that Matt will talk about. And now in closing, I couldn't give up the stage with also inviting you governors to think not only about these immediate problems, but to step back and think about a much bigger problem. If you address this issue, you will take a bite, an important bite, out of the tobacco epidemic. But we've been taking bites out of this epidemic for more than 50 years, since the first Surgeon General's report. And here we are, 50 years later, with 500,000 Americans dying every single year from these products, and no end in sight. Honestly, I doubt that there's a single person in this room of any political philosophy who wants to see our grandchildren and great-grandchildren grow up in a world surrounded by these addictive and deadly products, or who wants the NGA to be reconvening 50 years from now with another workshop on what to do about tobacco products. So my question for you is this: isn't it time to start a conversation about where we're going? Isn't it time to think about when and how we will begin a process of phasing out these products altogether, beginning with cigarettes? We won't do it this year, we won't do it next year, but in this century, hopefully long before the end of the century, long before the end of our lifetimes, hopefully sooner rather than later. And if that still sounds like a crazy proposition, my request to you is to think about that with an open mind and to float that question with some constituents that you trust. Not your staff, not your political consultants, but with constituents you trust. And you might just find this is one of those areas where the public might be out there ahead of the political professionals, the policy wonks, and the pundits. Thank you very much.